Did I say it right? Okay. That means good evening in Russian. Okay, for
That's
those who
true.
don't know. There. So this evening, I'm going to speak about death and dying, but what I'm calling is encountering life's endings, okay? Because the truth of the matter is we face deaths and rebirth during our entire lives, okay? During our entire, which I will get to later on. So why has this subject been something that's been part of my life in a very intimate way for probably the last 20, 25 years. It starts with the fact that, I shouldn't say starts, I'm going to come towards the ending first, is that I am 80 years old and my wife is 74 years old. And last week, once again, we discussed a subject that has become a recurrent subject in our life, which is where do we want to die or pass on? And how do we want to die or pass on? Okay, so the where, is it in a hospital where you're hooked up to all kinds of, pipes and machines that really transgress upon the body and the process of dying? Would you prefer to die or pass at home, okay, with your loved ones in a setting that you decide? Yeah. Where do you want to have your ashes or your body after you die? Okay. Where do you want them? When my family passed, and I'll share with that in a moment there. I have a younger brother who passed, and he decided that what he wanted done with his ashes is to put in a place, in a form, that when we are near him, we are reminded of his life and we can take in the energy of his life. So I don't know how well, but this is, I'm sorry, that's my father. That's my father. This is my brother. And what it is a lotus plant, okay, a lotus plant. And it's put in a pond on Maui. And each year, at the appropriate season, this plant comes out of the earth as if rebirth is occurring, and it stays with us for months, and he shares with us his beauty, his care for the environment. I can sit next to him and feel his energy coming towards me there. This, as I started to show, this is my father, okay? And my father's name was Jacob or Jack. And if you know what this is a jackfruit tree. And my father, in truth, had a very challenging, difficult life, but one of the things he did do is feed the family. And I was thinking of what essence did I want to remember my father with, what positive essence? And we decided that it would be a jackfruit tree. So every year when the fruit blooms, we take the fruit, okay? It says if my father's coming home with some money, and we bring it into our house when we're on Maui, and we eat and we celebrate the energy and the spirit, the positive energy, the positive spirit of my father, because there's much that on negative side that we don't want to take with us there. This, again, these, they're not high resolution prints. I apologize for that. This is my brother, Joe. And one of the things about Joe is that whatever room he walked into, it would like bring in light and the most beautiful energy. And we said, how do we want to remember Joe? So we planted Joe in a tree, okay, in a tree. And this tree blooms. And each year when we're on Maui, I go sit down next to my brother, I feel him, and he shares his energy with me. Now also, this is the House of the Suns, or Haleakala. It's an extinct volcano on Maui. It's considered to be one of the most sacred places on Earth. And what all of my family wanted is to take their ashes and cast it into the infinite. Cast it so there's no limitations on the soul journey there. And Haleakala, as if you're on the moon. And you sit there and it's like you're with the gods and the goddesses there. And then this is the Pacific Ocean. And each of my family members has had their ashes cast in the Pacific Ocean. Of course, particularly my mother and father, who led very difficult lives, lives of a lot of hardship there, a lot of restrictions. And one of the things that they wanted was to feel free, liberated, okay? Not to be in a casket, a rectangle casket with, dimensions like this, so on and so forth. They are kind of boxed in. They wanted their sense, their energy to be released. So we went out in kayaks and we cast their ashes into the Pacific, and they're floating all over the world there. So let me now share a very brief reading from my book, which is entitled Encountering Life's Endings there. And this explains also, why am I involved with death and dying? Louis, my son, I have some news for you. Your father is dead. He didn't suffer. Died at the age of 89. Lou, I, brother Joe, have lung cancer and I'm going to die. Mom, I have something to tell you that you need to know. Joe died this morning, died at the age of 47. Louis, I, brother Eddie, been diagnosed with amyloidosis, one of the world's rarest diseases. There is no cure for it. I was told I have between 1/2 year to 2 years at the most to live. Mom, I can't believe I have to say this to you. Eddie died this afternoon, died at the age of 44. Now let me stop for a moment. My mother buried her 2 youngest sons, which turns, the rhythm of life, the logic of life, the progression of life on end. So at that particular time, my mother felt that she had died, that she had just gone through an incredible death. The bodies, the life that had come out of her own body no longer was there. She wouldn't see her children grow up anymore. She wouldn't see them perhaps have children. They wouldn't be with her when she was passing. So at that particular time, my mother was challenged. There was a death in her life, and she could have taken in this energy in such a way that she would kind of shrink up, withdraw, not enjoy life anymore. And that is not what she wanted. She wanted to continue with a life form. So she really had to work very hard to bring the life energy, the birth energy back with her. So she did not die before her actual physical death, which, as I'll talk about a little later, happens, I think, with lots of people. Lou, hi. This is Al. Mom died this afternoon, died at the age of 94. Lou, I, brother Al, have lung cancer and I don't know how long I have to live. It looks like you're going to be the last of the Silverstein family. Lou, hi, this is Barbara, Al's widow. Al died this morning, had a series of strokes, and then passed away in his sleep, died at the age of 69. Now, if you follow this rhythm, my mother died at 94. My father died at 89. The 3 of her children died in years way before them. And so, we like to think in the logic of life is life progressive. Parents will grow older, okay? At some point they will pass or die, depending on what terminology you want, and their children be with them, at those last moments there. But that doesn't always happen. So what this illustrates, and you say, well, in my mind, I've got to start thinking about dying and death, how and where, when I'm in my 70s or 60s at the least, or perhaps when I'm, even older than that. But the truth is, we do not know when we are going to die, when we are going to pass. Okay. So one of the challenges or the opportunities for that is to ask yourself, what do you want to say to your loved ones? Okay? What do your loved ones, you want to hear from your loved ones right now there? What do you want to do now? Okay? Where do you want to go now? Because the truth is, we don't know if there really is going to be a tomorrow. We just don't know that. I want to read now 3 very brief quotations from some people. One whose name I think you'll know. Nothing lives forever in heaven as it is on earth. Even the stars grow old, decay, and die. They die, and then they are born. There was once a time before the sun and the earth existed, a time before there was day or night, long, long before there was anyone to record the beginning for this who might come after. These are the words of Carl Sagan and Anne Duran. Okay? Now I want to read you something by David Dida. No matter how much money or love you have made, one day your legs will become cold and numb. Your heart will stop, your breath will cease, and all will disappear. In some now moment, as real as this present one, your life will end. Are you ready for your death? Are you ready for the death of your children, your parents and friends? Are you ready? Have you loved fully and given your deepest gifts? Okay? Now, not say tomorrow or next week there. The sorrow we feel, this is by Rob Liano, the sorrow we feel when we lose the loved one is the price we pay for having had them in our lives. And when a loved one dies, there is great sorrow. There's a lot of grief. There is a lot of pain. But if you don't want to feel that grief, that pain, and sorrow, then what needed to occur is that loved one should never have been in your life. And what do you prefer? Not to have the loved ones in your life? Okay? And be able and somehow to say, that's the price to pay when the hurt, the sorrow, and the pain for having a loved one in our life there. There's no other choice. Okay? So when my brother Joe, who passed, I say, at 47, something occurred in his life which also resulted in his dying before his actual death at 47. What occurred was, one evening after he and his wife had had an argument, a very strong argument, his wife ran out of the house with their 4 children, got in the car, drove through a red light. Her car was hit by another car, and their 9-year-old son was killed. Okay? His 9-year-old son was killed. Okay. What do you do with that? How do you handle that? Do you scream? I hope so. Do you yell? I hope so. Do you cry so many tears as if an ocean is pouring out of you? Or do you do other things? Do you start drinking to shut out the pain? Do you take too many bad drugs to shut out the pain? Do you close yourself down and say, I'm never again going to allow someone to get into my life, to love someone, because I can be hurt again. So I'm going to shut down. Now, at the memorial service for his son, what occurred? Gender. It's a nice service. His wife is crying, as she should. People are coming up to her, and hugging her and say, okay, cry, we understand that. And Joe's standing there playing the man's role. He's supposed to hold things together because he's the man, right? He's supposed to make sure everything is going right. And at times, what he was feeling broke through, and he started to cry a little, and people would come up to him and say, Joe, no, pull yourself together. Hold yourself together. You're the man. You're supposed to make sure that everything is all right. So really, he never had the opportunity, to process this incredible pain, this incredible sorrow in a in a healthy way. Now, who knows why, but just a few years later, he contracted cancer, lung cancer, and he died. And one of the things that occurred is that, as his family views it, he did not fight very hard to stay alive. You know, perhaps that pain, that hurt that he experienced, which he was never allowed to be processed because he was a guy, a man, okay, was too much. He had nothing left in him. He was ready to just let go of all that. Now, I've also learned, I want to stay in this just for a moment because there's a life lesson to learn here from a dying. The truth of the matter is, from my own personal experience, my working with men, by being a teacher and so on and so forth, is that men do not cry enough, okay? They do not cry enough there. Crying is very healthy. Okay, I'm not saying get hysterical. You feel something hurt, you feel some kind of pain. You want to cry, you need to cry. It's a very healthy way to process the pain, the dying, the deaths we have in life. And if you don't do that in a healthy way, if you don't cry enough, you're going to, whether you realize it or not allow yourself to be open to love that's coming your way, okay? You are perhaps, as I said before, going to drink too much. You're going to do bad drugs, there. You're going to shut down too much. Men have to cry. That's one of the things we learned from dying and death. When men cry, it really opens their lives. And we also saw this in my death and dying class. One of the assignments that students had was to go home and speak to a parent, if they had a parent, or a grandparent, about what it's like to get old and to realize that you're mortal. Well, for most of my students, what they said resulted was one of the deepest, intimate, beautiful discussions they had with their parents since they were children. The parent allowed themselves to feel that, wait, I am mortal. I'm going to die at some moment. A thought that many of us don't want to have, or they realize their son and daughter might do that. They just kind of, what was holding them together kind of broke down. And they talked in very, very, very direct and intimate ways. Mom, where do you want to die? How do you want to die? What's it like to get old? What is it like really to be old? What do I need to do for you? Now, ironically, in about 85 or 90% of the cases, the parent that they had a discussion with was the mother. In all but rare cases, when the student tried to have that discussion with a father, particularly if it was a male student, in a short period of time, that father would start joking or start asking about the Cub score, or asking something else. And those students, after they heard what other students had experienced, really felt they had lost out of very possibly healing of a relationship with a parent. And when people shared this in class, it was just absolutely incredible. It was just absolutely incredible. Everyone was so touched, so deeply touched there. And the largest number of students, I just want to read something. This is from a student, I stopped teaching this class some years ago, and this is from a student who just wrote to me, Louis, I want to share this writing with you. As taking your death and dying class, following my father's death and preceding my mother's very much helped shape my perception of that time in my life. Much gratitude for the lasting impact your course has had on me. I hope this finds you well. Okay. My teaching, when I teach, I'm more concerned what students do outside of the class than what they do in class. What do they take from a class and incorporate into their lives? To me, that's the real test, okay, that I want to and have assigned to my students there. What are they doing outside of class there? So let's stay with this. I told you that, I'm 80, my wife's 74, and we had a discussion, a repeated discussion now, and perhaps the discussion is being repeated because we know 2 or 3 people who have died from COVID, who are elderly. And right now, 2 of our family friends have terminal illness, okay? They have a terminal illness and they're not going to live that long there. So my wife and I sat down and we talked about, how do we want to die? Where do we want to die? When do we want to die? And as we did that, both of us cry. It's really, when you say to someone else, wow, I'm going to die. And I think in my head, I'm not going to have any more moments at some point with Paula, the woman I've loved for 40 years. I'm not going to have any moments with my son. I'm not going to have any more moments with my daughter. I don't know if I'm going to see, either one of them have children there. When I started thinking about that, oh my God, the tears just flow and flow and flow there. And I'm very vulnerable at that moment, extremely vulnerable at that moment there. And what Paula does, she takes her arms, she comes close to me and embraces me, as if this embrace was our last embrace. And she holds me for moments, and I in turn do that for her. And that kind of embrace, it's so deeply felt because we're both so open there. That kind of embrace is the kind of embrace we should be sharing in life, okay? Because I don't know when I walk out of this door and I'm, am I going to come back in? Okay? I don't know. I said in my family, we've had a lot of deaths, a 9-year-old, a 47-year-old, a 44-year-old there. There was another child who died too. I don't know. So when my son leaves, or my daughter leaves, what are the last words I want to have them take with them? Is it, did you do your homework tonight? Where are you going? Are you going to do something I don't want you to do? Or if my son does something that makes me angry, which at times he does, or at times I say something to him that makes him angry, what do you want to do at the last moment? We've developed a habit, no matter what goes on, the last words I want my son to hear from me is, I love you. The last words I want to hear from my wife, and my wife and I at times, we've had our ups and downs. We've been married for over 40 years. We've had our ups and downs. The last words I want to hear from her is, I love you, because I don't know if there will be other words there. So think, when someone's departing, leaving your presence, presence, I think, what are the last words? What is the last thoughts? What's the last image? Because we don't know when this is going to occur. Okay. So we have this conversation, and my wife and I, after this time, perhaps I'll get to it. We have all the directives. We have, DNR, power of attorney, health power of attorney, so on and so forth there. Well, when my wife's mother was dying, before she was dying, my wife's mother, Gloria, she selected Paula, my wife, as the person, the power of attorney in relation to when, at what point, if she didn't die suddenly, should life support be withdrawn? Okay? If you're going to be on life support, is there a point at which you no longer want to be on life support because that is worse than the actual dying process? Well, my Gloria is dying. We fly to Miami, and they put in Gloria on a feeding tube, which she did not want. She specified she did not want to be on a feeding tube because that really is an assault on the body. Well, her son, I should say her grandson, who was in many ways raised by her, comes in and says, no, we're not taking the feeding tube off. I can't allow Gloria to die. She has to stay on the feeding tube. And Paula says, wait a minute, Gloria doesn't want that. Louis, is really what Lewis is saying. I'm not here to serve Gloria, which is what we're supposed to do when we're the dying. I'm here to have myself served. This is what I want, I need, not Gloria. So there's a discussion, or should a heated discussion goes on, and he says he's going to sue the hospital if they take the feeding tube out. There was another complication, a doctor, okay? And we shared with the doctor that Paula had the right, she was given power of attorney, held power of attorney, to decide when the feeding tube should be in. We didn't want it in, and the doctor agrees. This is a phone conversation. He comes into hospital, he looks at Paula's mother, and he says, oh, she looks just like my mother. I couldn't let my mother die. I couldn't let my mother die. Wait a minute now. Your doctor serves patient. Patient does not serve doctor. We got into an incredible wrangle, ending up that Paula's mother remained on a feeding tube for many days with great suffering, great pain. Okay? When someone is dying, we're there to serve them. They are not there to serve you. No judgment, okay? And if you cannot act with no judgment, then you're not the person to be there. This also played out in our own family when we were deciding who should have the power, if Paula or I are not able to. And we thought Anna, who's our eldest daughter, would be the person. And when we discussed it with Anna, she told us, Dad, Mom, I cannot do that. I cannot do that. I cannot allow you to die. And so we had a discussion with Ben, our son, who's younger. And he said, Mom and Dad, it's not that Anna is being bad or negative. She's being honest. Okay, that's what you want, the person's to be honest with you. And Ben said, I can do that. I'm here for you. So we chose Ben as power of attorney. So it really just illustrates, that even if it's 15, 20 years away, or if 5 years away, or, so that you need to have these kind of discussions, because you can't assume that this will occur or that will occur, whether with our children or the discussion that did not occur with Louis and Gloria and Paula, before. Louis needed to process that before, to accept at one point this woman who raised him in so many ways that he loved so deeply was not going to be with him. He could not deal with that. So at the time of dying, he became the person served, and not Gloria who needed to be served there. I'm looking at some notes, because, I'm 80 years old and my mind, it's not what it used to be, in many ways there. I want to go to another subject, which has really come out of the closet it was out of the closet in the 60s, and then it's come out of the closet again in recent years. And this deals with, the truth is, I even think, I've worked a lot in this field in many different ways, but when time I sit down and say, Louis, you're not going to exist. What does it mean not to exist? What does it mean no longer to be with the people? What does it really feel or mean like? And even with me, honestly, there is some anxiety that arises. There's some fear that arises, I'm not, my wife and I have chosen, spiritual paths that doesn't say if you're good, you're going to, heaven or so on, something like that there. There's some anxiety, there's some fear. And that's very common. The truth of the matter is, no matter how much you prepare, when the time comes, you don't really know how you are going to feel. It's like when you get married. Oh, I'm getting married and I know that. And then you get married and holy shit, man, all this is, or having sex for the first time, sexual loving for the first time. You think you know what it is, and then you do it, and you either turned off for the rest of your life, or you really say, I really did not know. This is so incredible. I just absolutely love it. We really don't know what's going to occur. So in terms of the anxiety and fear, in the 1960s, something came into the scene again. And what came into the scene again is these substances called psychedelics, okay? psychedelics, okay? And what psychedelics really mean, it's really a Greek term, it's really a freeing of the mind, the liberation of the mind from conventional thought, from social cultural restraints that have been put on you there, from what was implanted in you from your parents there. It's like opening up the mind's possibilities. What else exists there besides the structures that were implanted in you, indoctrinated in you? And people started working, people who were trained, because you had to go through training, not anyone could do this. People started using two psychedelics, okay, LSD and mushrooms, with people who were dying. And the idea was to liberate themselves from what they thought dying would be and to experience, to know it experientially. So I want to now, if you bear, well, I got to take a drink of water. I want to read you a brief excerpt from a book called by Michael Pollan, which some of you might have read some of his other works. He's really very well known. And the title of his book is How to Change Your Mind when What the New Science of Psychedelics Teaches About Consciousness, Dying, Addiction, Depression, and Transcendence. In patients, this is from in patients who are with life-threatening, I'm sorry, okay. Stanislav Grof, G-R-O-V, who was one of the pioneers in this field, wrote the following. After he worked with patients using LSD to help them experience what death and dying might be before you actually have the literal death and dying there. And this is what he writes there. LSD gave patients an experience of cosmic unity such that death, instead of being seen as the absolute and of everything and step into nothingness, appears suddenly as a transition into another type of existence there, okay? And what he's really talking about here is letting go, okay? Letting go, non-attachment. And those of you, who know anything or read anything, one of the basic teachings of Buddhism is that one of the great sorrows is attachment to things that really need to be let go of, okay? To let go. And when you have non-attachment, when you let go, your body, your mind, your consciousness is open to what you actually are experiencing. Again, not the restraints. And just like there's, you have a door and you need a key to open the door. It's hard to open your door without a key, or something resembling a key. What psychedelics does in that particular stage is open you up to, wait a minute now, I am not a separate individual, The great fear is, you have this body and you're not going to have any body. You're not going to be firm, you're not going to be delineated. What happens? Well, maybe what happens is you merge with the rest of existence, okay? You are now part of a greater whole. You're leaving one kind of existence and entering into another kind of existence, okay? You're flowing there. In 1965, this again is from Pollan's book, Sidney Cohen wrote an essay exploring the potential of psychedelics to alter the experience of dying. He described treatment with LSD as therapy by self-transcendence. The premise behind the approach was that our fear of death is a function of our egos, which burden us with a sense of separateness that is unbearable as we approach death. We are born into an egoless world when we are using psychedelics. Now again, when I say using, it's not just using, you're with a trained facilitator, okay? Because sometimes you can go into places which are very difficult, very challenging, okay? Which can evoke a lot of fear, okay? A lot of pain, and you need someone to help you walk past that, or you can become overwhelmed there. But we live and die imprisoned within ourselves. We wanted to provide a brief, lucid interval of complete egolessness to demonstrate that personal intactness was not absolutely necessary, and that perhaps there was something out there, something greater than our individual selves that survive our demise. Now, does that cause you fear? Or does that say, wow, isn't that absolutely incredible there? No, don't get uptight, okay? Because this can also occur, when you are, with your child, you're hugging a baby. When you're hugging a baby, you don't really exist separate from the baby. The baby doesn't really exist separate from you. It's like you're one. You're absolutely one. I know when I watched Paula nurse our son and daughter, there was no separateness. There was like, they were together. There was something bonding them. And that bond has existed beyond the actual experience of the nursing, the actual experience of holding the baby. There is something more out there. Now that can be fearful, or you can say, wait a minute now, I'm willing to explore. My kid brother, Eddie, who died at 47. Now, I'm not promoting anything. Don't misunderstand me. No, please don't there. At a very young age, he started traveling into other realms of existence through the use of psychedelics, or ethnogens, as we like to call it, which is mind manifesting. I was with him the week before he died. We weren't certain when he was going to actually die. And one of the things he shared with me, he said, Louis, I have no fear of dying. I have no fear of death. And I said, why? And he said, because I've been beyond this existence so many times. It's not something just I studied, not something I heard. It's something that I actually experienced. I know there is more. Yes, I'm going to miss my wife. I'm going to miss my children. I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss my brothers, certainly. But I'm going with no fear, okay? And so when you celebrate my passing, I want it to be a party, okay? I want you to send me off into what else exists in joy and passion, okay? I want you to dance. I want it to just go, okay? And you're going to be like the fuel for my existence that's going beyond this particular existence here. Okay, so I'm just going to, I think, go into one other subject because I want to leave time for discussion too, and there's much more there. I'm sure most of you, or many of you, have heard of the near-death experience. Okay, and what the near-death experience essentially is, while you're still alive, there's something that occurs that allows you to go beyond the body, okay, beyond this particular existence, and to travel into other realms of existence. Other realms, I don't know if the word is existence, other realms. And the reports are from most people is what they see is not, someone judging you say, oh man, you once cheated on a test, you once told someone you loved them when you really didn't to just get something from them. There's no one judging you in that regard in any way, any way whatsoever there. You float into this incredible realms, and you say, oh my God, what is beyond what I think is beyond? What is beyond what I think is beyond here. Now there's another version of this. And when my daughter, Anna, was, I think, 2.5 or 2 3/4 years old, she had to undergo major brain surgery. And it turned out to be really, in many ways, a life or death choice. And while she was undergoing surgery, she told us this later. She said, Dad, and she's under, she's going brain surgery 9 hours. You're under the most heavy, what's the word, that puts you asleep and so I can't think, you know what I'm talking about. And she comes out later, much later, and she tells us, Dad, I saw everything that was happening. I was floating out there. And I saw, when they cut open my head, I saw the tools that they used. Dad, Mom, I just saw everything. My daughter's on 2.5. She's not on psychedelics, okay? She's not drunk or anything like that. She is experiencing something beyond that we think we can experience, okay? That is another version of the near-death experience. But there's something else besides the near-death experience. And this relates to what I mentioned earlier, something I said earlier. What I call is the near life experience. Okay? And let me now read you again, just 3 little brief quotes. It's only when we truly know and understand that we have a limited time on earth and that we have no way of knowing when our time is up, we will then begin to live each day to the fullest, as if it was the only one we had. And this is by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And if you don't know who it is, she worked with the dying in many ways there. She brought death and dying out of the closet in the 1960s. Okay? She was in hospital settings, and when someone was dying, you're not supposed to let the person know that they're really dying, and you're not supposed to treat the person in the way that the person is dying. And you really don't tell the family members what's really going on because the subject's too difficult for everyone. And she felt this really was a great disservice. The people are dying, because usually and your family members know, and there's discussions that need to occur. And they don't, they may believe. So she brought it out of the closet. This is Erich Fromm, the famous psychiatrist. The whole life of the individual is nothing but the process of giving birth to himself. Indeed, we should be fully born when we die. And the idea being here is, in addition to your physical birth, when you were, just a baby, during your lifetime, there will be many opportunities, many challenges that come into your life that will allow you to bring new life into your beings or will shut you down. You have the opportunity to be reborn many, many times there. Do you choose that, or do you choose to kind of shut down and be in not a permanent death, but a kind of living death while you're still alive there? And this is, he allowed himself to be swayed by his conviction that human beings are not born once and for all on the day their mothers give birth to them, but that life obliges them over and over again to give birth to themselves. Gabriel Garcia Marquez there. Let's go to a hospital room again. I'm at Columbia College. I get a call from one of Jake's children. Jake wants me to come to the hospital where he's dying. Okay, I've known Jake for many years. Jake immigrated from Poland. He spoke 6 or 7 languages there. He fought in the Polish underground for many years there. And then he comes to the United States, and the best he could do was become a handyman at Columbia College. Okay, a great handyman. And we became great friends, intimate friends. So I go to the hospital, and what's going on? I go in the room, and I sit down on Jake's bed, and I said, Jake, what's going on? He says, they won't take the test. I said, Jake, who won't take the test? My children. And his 3 sons and daughter are in the hospital. And I said, what test? I want them to prove they're not my children. I think my wife had affairs with other men, and she gave birth to children who are not my children. And before I die, I want to know if they are my children. Now, Jake had shared that with his children, and their reaction was, how dare you ask us that? We're not taking any test. How dare you? No, what was coming out there was not just that moment in the hospital. What was coming out was a family dynamic over a period of years, okay? That thought that Jake had in his mind, which really brought some distance between him and his wife and some distance between him and his children, is a discussion that needed to occur, a feeling, a thought that needed to be expressed years ago so that repair could occur between he and his wife. Repair could occur between he and his children, because that's like little debts, DEATH, before you die. So I go out, to talk to the children. Oh, Jake, he's being the kind of father he always was. He wants to tell us what to do. He's always been like that. We're not going to listen to him. I say, take it easy. Breathe. Okay? You're filled with anger. Okay, I want you to breathe out the anger. Okay? Because you're so filled with anger, you're not allowing anything else to come in that space. And what needs to come into that space is what Jake is asking you, okay? What he's really asking you. And what I want you to do is go into that room. When Jake says, you got to take the test, say yes. Say yes, you'll do it, whether you're going to do it or not. Get over that, and now tell your father what you want to tell him as the last words, okay? And what do you want to hear from your father as his last words to you? You know what the words were? I love you. I love you, Dad. And he told each of his children that he loved them. That brought closure. And they realized at that moment, now that that was out of their bodies, which had consumed them for years, they had space for life to come in. It's just like having a garbage pail that's full of garbage. There's no more room for garbage. Well, when you take the garbage out, you can look at a garbage pail and say, oh, that'd be fun to take to the beach and put a lot of sand in and make great sand piles with that. No? What is that? You have room for life as you want it, as any way you want it to come in there. How are we doing? 7:51. Okay, there's a lot more, but I like some now feedback or discussion or questions. Okay, folks, I'm here. Any thoughts, any reactions, any questions? Because I say, there is more, but, my class was 15 weeks,
Dad.
15, yes.
Dad, I want to hear more.
Anna, where are you? I want to see your face, my daughter. My daughter is on.
Hi.
There's Anna Cofresi-Yarbrough.
I'm making dinner.
Yes, honey. What's up?
Well, this is more personalized.
Go ahead.
To me.
What?
I want to hear more about what I said to you as a child in the hospital after my surgery. Just a side note.
Well, you told us, what you had experienced while you were under anesthesia. What occurred, what the doctors were actually doing there.
Wow.
What they said. And when you came out, we could have said to each other, oh man, that's bullshit. I mean, and that's, how could that be? But the idea being is, who knows?
Yeah.
What's the
exactly.
possibility? So that was, that's basically, and when I'm not that moment on it, I mean, I'm saying, maybe the next day or something, I don't remember a quote.
Sure.
You were under heavy anesthesia, very heavy anesthesia, there. And I remember when Anna was in the hospital, when I said before, we were in the children's ward. And at that time, there were a lot of children who entered when Anna did, who never left the hospital. They died. So again, we don't know. So the idea being, since we don't know, what do you want to do now? What do you want to say? What do you want to share? Okay, because we don't know, okay, what's going to occur. And that's a discipline, because it's easy, to just go with the moment. Oh, you hurt me and screw you with this and that there. Yeah, but wait a minute now, no. This is my daughter, this is my child, my son, this is my wife, because this is maybe the last words that they will hear. And and to show how hard this is, when I remember going home for Thanksgiving once after I left New York, and I was going to, I think, University of Illinois then, doing my master's. I went home for Thanksgiving, and it was time to leave. And my father comes out, comes towards me and extends his hand towards me, as he always did. And he said, goodbye. And I said, no, wait a minute now. I don't want this to happen like this there. I took his hand and I grabbed him towards me, and I put my arms around him, and I said something to him I had never said, because there was a lot of anger in me. Dad, I love you. What did my father do? He took his two hands, put them on my chest, pushed me away, ran into the bathroom, and started to cry. I never had heard my father cry before, and I realized at that moment, he had been so hurt as a child that he literally had shut himself down. And the threatening words which he had heard from me before was the F word, F-U-C-K-U. He had no problem with that. He knew what that hostility, what that distance meant. The words that were so threatening to him was, I love you. He then came out, and I thought there was some breakthrough, and he extended his hand to me and said, Louis, bye. At that moment, I realized I had to work on forgiving my father. Yeah, he had inflicted a lot of stuff, but he had a hard life. He did the best he could. And I want him to leave here repaired. So when he does return, he does not return with all the pain and sorrow that he experienced in this life, and then has to let it go in his next life, in whatever form his next life might be. Okay?
Okay, first of all,
Hi, Sean.
I want to
Hi,
thank
Sean. Hi, that's my daughter. No, that's my other son. He's really married to my daughter, but when they got married, he said, Dad, I'd like you to be my dad. And I said, absolutely. So I gained not just a husband, I gained another incredible son. Isn't that wonderful? There. Okay. Any other sharings, questions, discussion that you want to? I can see by your faces, many of you in different places.
Sean has one for later, but he wants other people to talk first.
Okay.
and please, you can raise your hand that we do not talk all at once. But first thing, I want to thank you, Louis. That was extremely, for me, it was very satisfying because it reflected in many ways what I think about death and reinforced my feeling of how to deal with the death. And for me, it's almost self-evident that memory is much more powerful than a piece of land or a piece of stone on top of this land as a memory of a person. But interestingly enough, and I never thought about this, that you always, with all, at least your examples, you associated each person with a plant or with some material stuff that you need to kind of be near in order to do this association. Why? Why do you need this physical evidence if your memory is live with this person?
Well, you know what? Why do we need it? Well, you said you don't need it, so it's not all the weeds there, because where depends on what the physical evidence is. That I think you want to somehow, feel and touch in some way, or to see that person actually existed, and I think, the headstones and so on and so forth there, it gives you an opportunity, in some way to feel that you're connected to that person, and maybe that person's in a safe place. The examples that I use is that, we put our family's ashes into trees, into bushes, and the reason they wanted it and I wanted it is that I really believe that all life forms have vibrations or energy there. And that when I'm down sitting next to my brother or next to my father or mother, next to the tree or the plant or the jackfruit, there's something that's released in me that I don't believe would be released just in my head. There's something that it's visceral. I can touch it. I can feel it. And that's something that I need there. And I like it also that in death, we're bringing about life, because you're taking, the ashes or whatever you wish to, there are other forms of green burial where the entire body goes in, and, you put that body in a sack, and you put some seeds in there, mushroom seeds or other seeds there, you put that in the ground, and out of the body that's decaying, life is feeding life. And some people really get off on that idea, in my death, I'm going to feed life there. So Ilya, why do some people need it? I think there are a whole bunch of reasons. If you don't need it, that's fine. But there's another point here. Do your son and daughter and wife need it? You know, what do they want? You know, to say, I don't want anything, but maybe they want a headstone. Maybe they want a tree. You know, somehow it will make your passing, or I don't mean your, whoever it is, the passing easier on them. So when my wife and think about the things that we want to have occur, we're not just thinking about, well, myself. We're also thinking about what effect will it have on others. So in many cases, the others do want something. You know, this is why some people take ashes and they put it in an urn, they put it on your fireplace, you know, which we did with my brother. And then someone came to our house and stole that little urn. I don't know what they did when they opened it up. You know, I don't know if they knew what was going on there, but it's just something that, you know, gives you something physical. And I think, you know, I'm a very physical person. I come from a culture that's very physical. My wife is a Latina, which is a totally, you know, not just mind culture, but a body culture. And there's something about the physical that's absolutely incredible. I can tell my wife, I love you. She takes it in. But if I put my arms around her and tell her I love you, she takes it in more deeply. Okay? She just takes it in more deeply, like that. You know.
No, that's kind of answers my question. But let others answer.
Yeah, of course. Well, I don't know if it answers you. Okay, we're doing the best we can, Yulia.
Tanya, you can raise your hand on this. I don't remember where it is, but Tanya already raised. But you are muted. So please unmute.
I think Marilyn has first question. Please, Marilyn, go ahead.
Well, I don't have a little hand raising thing down here for some reason today. I don't know why, but I just wanted to share one thing is this time of the year is a great time to go to the National Mexico Museum of Art in Chicago, and you can do it virtually. Because one of the things they do every year is that they have people come in to create ofrendas for Day of the Dead. And I mean, this year is centered around people who have passed from COVID. But I mean, in other years, there's often a theme, and they're very powerful, you know, statements about life and death. I mean, one year someone did something where it was a tribute to school children who had been shot in Chicago, and, you know, with empty chairs, and it's very powerful. And I think until I had gone there, I hadn't really understood the Day of the Dead celebration and, you know, of honoring the parents. And there's this one friend that this woman had done for her grandmother. And her statement was that her grandmother told her that people die 3 deaths. There's the first death when the spirit leaves the body, the second death when you're interred in the earth, and the third death is when you are forgotten. And that the whole purpose of Day of the Dead is to make sure that third death never happens. So, I mean, the ofrenda is typically, you know, you bring out things that remind you of that person, or things that are favorite, you know, of that, that person. I mean, typically bread to attract them, but, you know, if your father loved to fish, you'd have a fishing reel. And I mean, we don't do it every year, but we've done that sometimes, like around our house. And it's really sort of just brings back a lot of memories when you think about, you know, what you have that was of your parents or other loved ones that you gather. So I do encourage people maybe just to go to their website and look at some of their virtual tours and celebrations.
Yeah, it's a time of sorrow, but it's also a time of great joy, a great celebration. The same thing occurs in New Orleans weddings. If you go to New Orleans weddings and weddings there, I mean, they have parades with music blaring all over the place there because they want to send the spirit off, you know, with positive energy there. I just would add something to what Marilyn has said, that we are perhaps forgotten in our conscious minds, but we're not forgotten in our unconscious minds. You know, I know, you know, even though my father died years ago, something will occur. And I look at the way I'm behaving and I realize, wait a minute now, that's my father's impact on me when I was still a child. Okay. So there's a lot is, you know, a lot is forgotten, you know, on the conscious mind, but the subconscious mind remembers everything. you know, just everything there. And so the idea being is to explore the subconscious in many different ways there and see what's left from those who have passed on that is really not having a positive effect on your life, and what is there that is having a positive effect. Work to let go the negative and work to bring in the positive there. Like that.
Okay, so let me, I see 3 hands raised. Tanya raised her hand first. So
They're raising hands. I don't know who raised their hand first.
Okay.
We'll get to everybody. Tanya, hi.
Yes, hi. It's a very interesting subject, and we actually discuss it quite a lot with Ilya, and my kids who are also here always really disgusted with any kind of discussion about our passing away, and they don't want to talk about it at all. But let me ask you first question. So you have encountered an incredible amount of death in your life. I've never heard. Did you start teaching about this subject after this, or you always were interested in this? Have you used your experience to bring it to the class?
Let me answer that sequentially, okay? In my death and dying class, I brought in people who were dying. I brought in people who were working with the dying, and I brought in people or a person who killed other people. A young man who at the age of 20 went to Vietnam and killed a whole bunch of people. Now, the truth of the matter is, in most cultures, I think including our culture, men get related to dying through war, okay? War games, you know, to death at an early age. And you become, after a while, you know, insulated. So when you read in the paper, a soldier has died, you just think a soldier's died. You don't think, as they, you know, described in many books, a red badge of courage, someone's father's died, you know, someone's brother died, someone's son died. So as a young man, I thought a lot about dying and death in the relation of, I want to be a good soldier. One of the reasons I dropped out of college when I was 20 years old to join the United States Army. I wanted to be a man. I wanted to have that power where I could take life from other people. That's really being a man. So that's our first experience, you know, and that has to change, definitely. When I really got into this book is when starting teaching a class, when one of my family members died, and I'd be in the hallway, and someone would say to me, Louis, they didn't know what happened. How are you feeling? And I would say to them, do you really want to know? You want to take the time to really hear me? Do you really want to know? Because I needed some people to talk to, okay? Because at any moment, I know in one of my classes, you know, when I announced my mother's death, you know, in my classes, we always start the class with, what's something that happened in your life since the last time you met? And we go around the room, and it came my turn, and I said, my mother died last night. And the students didn't know what to do, and I started to cry, just cry, because I really was feeling the loss of my mother. And luckily, there was a woman in the class who was 50-something who had experienced it, and she came up to me and put her arms around me and said, Louis, it's okay to cry. It's okay. And this is good for your students to see, okay? This is really good for your students to see there. So that really got me thinking about, wait a minute now, what happens when you're in the presence of someone who's lost someone? What do you say to the person? You know, I'm sorry, that might be appropriate, but wait a minute, maybe you want to ask that person, what do you want to hear from me? What can I do for you there? So I started to say, well, maybe we need to, you know, teach a class on death and dying. It happens, you know, and then another brother dies, okay? And then my mother dies, then my father dies. And, you know, and I was told when I first offered this class, students are not going to the class, they're young, no one's going to enroll in the class. So the class is always enrolled. And I remember when we went around, I usually had students in the class who came for a number of reasons. And one of the reasons they came, Tanya, is that, one of the highest instances of death in the United States is adolescence. There's a very high suicide rate among adolescents, In the city of Chicago, we hear about all the shootings that kill people. Well, I taught for 5 years at Highland Park High School in Highland Park. The North Shore had at that point the third highest suicide rate in the United States, from Evanston through Lake Forest. Also on the Northwest side. So I had students in the class who had lost a friend, had lost a brother or a sister, and they wanted to talk about it. So that really, continued the class on and on and on. And I think I taught it for 18 years. And it was an incredible experience for myself, an incredible experience for the students. And that's when I also decided to write my book, Encountering Life's Endings, which is about the last death, but it also has to do with the end of love. Paula is not my first wife. She's more than my first wife in many ways. But I was terribly in love with my first wife. We were terribly in love with each other. And then we got divorced. And I died. I was heartbroken. I closed down. It was so hard. And I had to ask myself, after the morning, do I want love to come into my life again? And then I have to work on letting go of the sorrow and opening my heart, so when a lovely person comes towards me, they'll see there's a heart searching for love and not a heart that's closed. So it's about the end of love. It's about the end of childhood. Childhood is the end of childhood is kind of a death. You enter this, adolescent life, and then you become a adult, and my God, it's hard being an adult. It's hard being a child there. And so, So it's all that came together. Okay. So I say, as a young person, when I was in the Army, I learned how to kill people. I learned how to blow up people. As most many men do. That's death, man. Okay. And then I decided I'm not going to do that. So I made a life decision. I decided to seek release as a conscientious objector, someone who would not kill on the orders of the government. And I was facing 3 years in jail and a $10,000 fine because I was refusing to kill. Our society right now, is totally infused with death and dying, but in a very unhealthy way, very unhealthy way like that. So that's my answer, Tanya. I don't know if enough, but that's what I said. Okay.
Let others ask.
Is it Idle?
There are two. I don't know. Whoever starts first would.
Okay, I think. How do you say your name?
Idil?
Idil, right. I met you, right?
Yeah.
I met you. I remember now. Yeah, hi. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I'm so happy I'm here. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah. So, and Yuri reminded me, and I needed this. I just found out my dog is dying yesterday. I'm really sad, but this is helpful. And it's interesting with dogs because they don't talk, but but you still love them so much, and etc. But actually, what struck me in this is about men not crying enough. That's actually what I wanted to touch more so. I think of my dad and my grandpa, and they have so much. I would love to talk to my dad about death, but he jokes a lot. Recently, I had a thing where I tried to talk deep with him, let's get deep. Who are you? Do you know who I am? You're my dad. But I wanna, before we die, we're gonna die. I wanna really get into, more feelings and deep conversations with him.
What I say to people like that, sometimes, you're here, let's say, and your dad here. The physical presence might be too much. So what you might want to do is, do something old-fashioned. Write him a letter. Okay, write him a letter, which will allow him to take it in without having to see the effect on you right then. Sometimes physical presence too. Write him a letter, okay, and express that and tell him. Now, hopefully he responds, okay? But if he doesn't, you can now, still live with, you've told him what you want to tell him, which is a release, even if he doesn't tell you what you want to hear from him. So write him a letter, I think a letter, a handwritten letter is better than email in this particular thing. There's something more intimate about a handwritten letter. You actually see, you see the presence, the feeling, what's there. So give that a try like that and see what happens. And maybe, how old's your dad?
He's 53, 55.
Oh, he's a child.
Yeah.
Okay, so
He's a child.
let's
So, let him grow up.
Yeah, I agree.
Kids, you need to grow up.
He agrees that he's still like in his college years.
Okay, and maybe he is doing, the best he could do. When I spoke about my father, years later, my father wrote me a letter telling me, how much he loved me, which I never had heard in person. Okay, and he didn't do that till he was in his late 70s. When he realized, wait, I'm going to die, and maybe there's some things I need to say to my son.
Louis, let's
So, right, take it from there.
other to ask questions because we have run out of time, and Judy clearly wants to ask you something. And I want
Okay,
Thank you.
go ahead.
I mean, Paula, Louis. Now I'm confused. Sorry, Louis. Yeah.
Judy, hi.
Hello, hey, thank you for the great lecture. So, Louis, I am wondering, do you have any plan after you die? Like, what do you want to become? Do you want to reach enlightenment? Do you want to be a demigod? Do you want to be a human again? Do you want to be a man? Do you want to be a woman? Who do you want in your next life? What's your plan?
Well, I want to be a singer. No, I've known this for years. When I was growing up, Frank Sinatra was my guy. And I want to be, among other things, a singer. Okay, I mean, that I think. I would love to have another, continue my ride, my journey with Paula, Anna, and Ben, in one form or another. I would like that to occur. My plans are to be, in more practical ways, to be cremated and my ashes put in a life form, on perhaps on Hawaii if possible, also where my daughter is living there. I'd like them to be cast in the ocean. I'd like them to, be put in Haleakala. The truth is, even, I'm 80 years old and I don't know how many years I have left. I'm not much thinking of being enlightened. I'm doing what I think need to do might lead to that. What I'm more focused on is what I call it, living life. What do I want to share with my daughter, my wife, and other loved ones that I become more enlightened right now? And I'll see what happens. I don't think I will have control over what occurs. Okay, I have to let go, and that's one thing. I like to be this, and so I don't think we have control. Open yourself up and see what comes your way.
we need to wrap it up. I know that Yuri wanted to say something before the lecture. If you still have a desire to say something, that would
Want to say something, Yuri?
That would be the last word. I put you on the spot.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Yuri.
Okay, I will not say what I was going to say before, but Louis, there are few people here who have known you for a long time, and others just met you. But now I think everybody knows that you are the one who can talk about things that other people not only not very comfortable talking about, but not even very comfortable listening and hearing. But every time you talk about that, I see that all people around you get comfortable with this. And that is a phenomenal quality that you showed one more time now. And we may not have time to hear the answer, but at some point when we meet next time or now, when do you think we forgot in our culture how to think about death properly? Ancient Greeks probably, I don't know if they used LSD and mushrooms, but they had different attitude towards life and death, and they seem to be doing it right, at least according to what you're describing. When did we forget it, and how did we forget it? Do you know?
There are positive, let me answer this real quick. There are positive aspects of that, but I would throw in here, this is one of the effects of capitalism. Okay? Death and dying became a profit and loss venture. And for most of history, people died in their homes. They did not die in an institutionalized setting. But people figured out, well, how can we monetize death and dying? Okay? And that started this whole thing. And that's not something you think about, really, you don't know how to handle it. Only specialized people know how to do this there, and you got to do it in a certain way. You got to have this and this and that. So it's something that occurred at least in this culture, United States, in modern times, really in modern times, until really into the 1900s, people died at home. It wasn't something that was this distant mystery thing, and people became familiar with that. You lived in multi-generational families. There was birth and death occurring, all the time. You knew about birth, you knew about death there, the life cycle, so on and so forth there. And then we started separate. We monetized this, we moved away. Everyone in America wants their own home, their own thing, got to be separate from this, don't be with the families anymore. And it became, something that was put in the closet. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was highly criticized for bringing the subject out, highly criticized about this. And doctors themselves, I asked our family physician, do you have all the forms that you need to have so you're dying? And he said, no. And I said, why not? He said, I can't think about the subject. Okay. We can talk about this more at another time. Go ahead, Ilya.
I think that it's time to wrap it up. Thank you very much.
Yes, it is.
If anyone, I do not know exactly when and how next and what would be the topic of next lecture, next presentation. We have it at the time when something comes forward, like Louis did, and said, I have something to say, to tell you people. And usually we have all the recordings. This one also recorded. I actually should stop. This is not part of this, but I can cut it later. I'll put this either on my YouTube channel, or if Louis prefers, it would be on his, and you can share it with anyone. And if you have interest in listening next time, Louis has my email, and you can send your email, and I would add you to distribution list, and next time you will be you will be notified about the next lecture, which I do not know when and how it would take place. And thank you very much to Louis. And
thank you. Sean, I'm sorry we didn't get to you, but